So what I'm going to do here is talk about the final project discussions or final phase of the project will be a couple things I'll go over next, and then it'll be a discussion. So we're going to end up moving our code from the private repo into the public. We're going to change the folder structure. I'll show you how I did a global find and replace. It was just so much easier than do it individually. I'll have you add a couple of pages, do something around a cover, CSS.cover implementation. I'll show you how I did mine. And then we'll go from there. So coming into here, this is the instruction for this. And so in this final phase, I gave you an overview of what I just talked about, right? And you'll end up doing in your reply. So you'll finish the work that I'm going to go over, and then you'll in a reply to the discussion. So this item is a discussion that you will end up posting, right? Your link to your site, so your github.io, and I'll have you put it in a final folder. I'll show you that next. Okay, so let's just go over the work and then we'll talk about the final part, but just to give you a preview. So first thing I want you to do is set up your public project folder. And this is in detail what you're going to do, right? But I'm actually just going to show you as well. But you're going to, in your public repo, you'll create a folder named final. And then inside of final, you'll create a subdirectory called image. And this structure is now the folder where it's at in the HTML files is not necessarily different, but the image is, and you'll end up changing all your image references to reflect that. And so in the final version, so copy, right? So once you set up that structure, and let me just show you, right? So in this case, when I was in my private repo, right, under my project, I had that image folder at the same level as my phases. So now that we're moving into the final, what you would have is there's your final, and then you would have your image directory right underneath there. So that means we change from the // to just image / the reference. And now what makes this is a little easier, in my opinion, is actually to do the find and replace, which I'll show you in a minute. So then you copy the files. So first you set up the folder, right? So it's a different structure, right? And then you copy your image files from your private repo into the new final image folder, right? And then you also update all the references in your HTML and CSS file to reflect that new path. And then, right, so you're copying your final version of your HTML, and I didn't talk about this specifically, but from the P4 into the final, right? And then I suggest doing a find and replace to change all these. Now, you can do it manually. I wouldn't know one way or the other, but it's just good to know how to do this type of large change from a find and replace, which you may have used in Word, but in VS Code it works very well. So make sure you do all the testing and then do a commit. So let me just show you one of the first things I did is after I'd copied over my CSS, my images, and then all my HTML files, what I did is I ended up changing my VS Code to actually be that final folder. And when I open it up, and it's going to give me, hey, listen, this is part of another repo, I'm going to be fine. I don't even have to, it's just giving me a heads up that this is part of a repo, which is fine. So in here, one of the nice things you can do, and I'm going to come here, is you can do, and over here, edit. So file, edit. Under edit, you can do replace in files. So this is nice because what it'll do is it'll just look through your files. So I'm going to get rid of this because this is some of the changes I was doing. Like I was making some global changes. So what this does is */****HTML will then search through all the HTML in the folder that you have open. And so in this case, if I wanted to search for, right, now in this case, remember your IMG, right, would be SRC. So you can figure out how you want to target this, right? If it's equal to, right, in this case, Now I'm not going to show you the whole thing because this is part, and by the way, mine is no longer there because I've already updated it. But what you want to do, and notice how it's actively searching. So if I went in here now, because I've already updated it, I can see all my image references, right, for that. And then I can tell it, here's what I want it to be. Okay, you can exclude files if you want to. And then when you're ready, you just hit the replace all. And I may have you do something in attendance around this just because I think it's really helpful. So then once you have all your images changed, you always want to make sure, and of course now that I've opened this folder, I would go live. And this is my latest version. I almost didn't do it because I still wanted to play around with some stuff, but I'm like, you know what? It's good enough for now. So in this case, I wanted to make sure all my images still rendered fine, my CSS was fine, and I was good to go on that part. So once you get that done, the setup of the public final folder and update images, the path reference. Okay, so make sure you do that for that commit. And then you're going to create a contact page with a form. So in this case, right, create a new file contact in your folder, right, link it. Now, I said in here, I thought about this afterwards. I'm saying link this page from your footer of your site. And you're going to create an about page in a minute. So you can, if you want to put one up in the menu and one down in the footer, just don't put them both on the menu. I end up specifying here, but the good news about listening to the video is I'm giving you an option, right? Now this is also where, because especially if you're updating your menu, you're going to have to touch each page. And this is also where using that whole find and replace feature can be really helpful, because you can find a particular, now let's just say a link, right? So you could find your nav, but more specifically, I'd probably go after my LIs, right? And then I would, now in this case, right, so I'd have to specify, but this is where you play around with learning, right, how to then target particular patterns in your code or things in your code, and then you tell it what you're going to change, what are you going to update it to be. And I found this to be really helpful here on the contact page, right? So also make sure you include this on your sitemap. Write a short paragraph about yourself. Let's see, I did this because I ended up putting my contact. I ended up also redoing my footer. And so here's my form, and then I just wrote a little something about that as well. Okay, so and then on here, make sure you have elements wrapped in a field set, use a label, 3 different kinds of inputs, and do the required attribute. Okay, then you style it, right? So make sure it matches the rest of your site, validate your HTML, and then do contact form styling. Done. And now you add your hero image. Now in this case, I'm giving you some flexibility in how you're going to do it. I ended up doing it this way, which is on my home page. I ended up making my vertical height a little higher for this, and then on each of my menu and then my sub pages, I did, and I used a class then to specify which size that I wanted. And this is something I'm still playing with. I'm not totally happy with it yet, but for this purpose, it does fine. Okay, so you can see that about page that I'll talk about in a minute. So in this case, you don't have to have it on all pages, but I would suggest you have it on your index page. Now, if you want to if you want to put it somewhere else, you know, either way, you're going to document it. So this is the other thing, is you want to document where you're placing your hero image. So put some context in there, right? And you know, generally it's at the top of the page. I mean, you may come up with some other type of integration of it, but typically that's what your hero image is. So responsive does not repeat, ensure that any overlay text is easier to read, which one of the things I know I'm going to work on is I think I'm going to end up making my menu text white, even though my hover is white, because, and then maybe reversing it there, because I was looking at it, I'm like, yeah, the shirt in my hero image, I ended up changing and making it a little more blurry as well, so it wasn't so distracting. So that we've learned all those techniques in the course, right? So document that as well, and then your hero image with your background size cover. And then you're going to create another new page. This is the about page, and now this is where well, actually, yeah, so in the contact page, I said put it in your footer, but again, I'm going to give you the flexibility here to reverse that. Like, so if you, so see, I have it in here, and then I have my contact down in my footer, but if you wanted to reverse that, you could. You could have contact up here and about down in the footer, but you get to choose that. So whichever way you do it, if you once you add it, whichever direction, whether it's if it's the about or the contact in the menu, then you need to hit that on every page. Okay. And then, however you do it, they both of those pages need to be added. Matter of fact, I think that's one of the things I haven't done that I need to do is actually update my sitemap. Yeah, I got to go update my sitemap because I didn't do that yet. Okay. And so now on your About page, you want a few paragraphs describing your site's purpose, what is the site about, who is it for, what inspired you to create it, and then add future plans. So you're adding some content into this About page. Okay, I think I got some of this, but oh yeah, I did. Okay. Yeah, I did have some of that created. So now that you've done all that, now you know, this is the updating part. Now we're going to go into the discussion part. So this is it's a time to reflect, right, and share your work with the class. So now you're going to share your link to your project. So post your Google Pages public URL. So we've been doing this when we've been doing attendance. Remember, it is configured like CIT85 and then whatever your repo name is, right, for me, right, and then it would be final. So making sure that URL, and again, you have to push your code, make sure that URL is consistent with what I've shown here, okay? Now, in your post, you're going to rate your own HTML and CSS knowledge. Score yourself from the beginning to the end of the course. So, like I started with whatever, 0 to 10, and I ended with somewhere between there. And then write a short reflection on your progress, like how, you know, what do you feel really helped you extend that progress. And then part 2 of this is actually to 10 points for both of these, right? So first, actually, it should be. Oh, right, because there's also points related. Sorry, took me a minute here to remember how I'd set this up. So each part of what you've done above has points, and then the discussion itself. This is how we grade it. So the project is 20, 80, and then the discussion is 20. So then the second part of this is to choose one classmate's final project review and give them constructive feedback, right? So make sure you're giving suggestions, but what did you like? What worked well? Any suggestions you might have for improvement? These are the kind of things you want to cover in your feedback. Okay, all right, so that is your final share out for this class. Thanks so much. And now I'm going to go record the attendance. All right, hope this helps.